Hey everyone, you're listening to the Fantasy Football Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Blue, and today I'm going to be comparing Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa, the two highest rated quarterbacks in the 2020 NFL Draft. We're going to start first saying both in Re-draft and Dynasty, I have Joe Burrow ranked higher than Tua Tagovailoa. Right off the bat, Burrow is going to be the starter, so that's why Tua is ranked below him. And Joe Burrow's, if we look at the Bengals, has a better offense. Now, if we compare the two directly, I would say that Burrow is actually going to be the better quarterback projecting overall anyway, due to the fact that he was asked to do more in LSU. The stuff we see on tape, we see a little bit more out of Burrow if we take a look at last year's tape. But even if you go back to 2018, it wasn't like he was bad. He was already projected to go in the draft around 5th or 6th round. Now, the difference between the two, of course, is Tua has a history of being really, really good. But if we're comparing the two, just on what we see on tape, anticipation, eye manipulation, arm strength, and accuracy, I don't really see a big difference. I think they're both going to be really, really good NFL pros. I think if this was a standard year where they weren't both in it, Tua would have gone number one as well. Now, obviously, Tua has the health issues, which it's a big deal. So, like, if you talk about would he go number one, I think so. The Miami Dolphins medical staff is who evaluated Tua. They sent out the reports to the rest of the NFL. So clearly, the Miami Dolphins felt good enough about Tua Tagovailoa's progression to draft him. But at the same time, there was a lot of reports the Miami Dolphins were trying to trade up to draft Burrow with the Bengals. They were trying to work the Detroit Lions into the trade so that they can move up, get the Detroit Lions pick, package more picks together to move up with the Bengals and get Joe Burrow. So again, the medical staff was clearly on Tua's side, but they saw things either that they thought Burrow was better, or there's at least some question whether Tua is going to become the same quarterback when he comes back, right? So the other thing is he's younger by a year. I don't really put too much stock into the age if it's only like a year. Now, if we're talking about a 21-year-old versus a 24-year-old, that's a big kind of difference to me. That's 3 years of development. If it's close, I'm probably going to go with the 21-year-old in that aspect. So like when Baker Mayfield got drafted and Sam Darnold got drafted, I still think Sam Darnold projects to be a better pro than Baker Mayfield. He was just much younger in his developmental stage as a quarterback when he got drafted. But going back to these two, I don't really see that much of a difference. Tua is a very experienced quarterback, and so is Joe Burrow. So I said anticipation, eye manipulation, arm strength, accuracy. There's really not a big difference there, and I don't really project either one of them having issues with their arm strength, which is their biggest knock if you're listening to like the experts. But really, on an NFL season, you're not really asked to make throws 75 yards down the field. The highest you're typically asked to make is about a 60-yard throw, 65, and that's like once every 3 or 4 years where you're making those kind of throws. If you go to the kind of completions, it's typically anywhere from 45 to 60 yards, and they can both make that throw, right? So, and then add in the accuracy, and I really like both of them the way they project as just talents. But if you look at the things that Joe Burrow kind of separates himself from Tua, the first one is athleticism. And that's kind of a question because if you just look at stats and you look at game film, it looks like Burrow's faster than Tua. Neither one of them did anything at the combine, but Tua, you have to take into account, was hurt that sophomore season where we saw the most Tua. He had ankle problems, right? And then this last season, he hurt his hip. And the year before that, he was a freshman and really didn't get an opportunity to really show what he can do. So it's a big question on how fast Tua is. Now, on film, it does look like Burrow's faster. Statistically, he's rushed for more yards. I don't think either one of them project to be a really big threat running the football. And that includes Burrow, but he's got the ability to kind of be mobile, kind of in the same aspect of a Aaron Rodgers, kind of 100 to 200 yards. But honestly, I think they might both have that ability. I do give the nod to Joe Burrow. He's also taller than Tua, who's shorter. Is already going to have to deal with that. Balls getting batted down at the line of scrimmage, those kind of things. And then health, obviously that's a big push towards Joe Burrow. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, okay, but people get healthy. He's only 22 years old. His injury, how big of a problem is the hip? Well, the hip is huge, especially when you're talking about getting the ball way downfield, because that's part of the motion. I'm sure everybody's seen the meme where the video where Dak's doing his little dance. That's getting his hips involved into the pass so that he can really drive the ball. If those hips don't come back to 100%, that's going to be a big question. So if you're making the investment dynasty-wise, Burrow is such a sure thing. And on the other end, you have Tua, who's dealing with an injury. So again, right off the bat, it's Burrow there. Dynasty-wise, you should already be drafting Burrow. But let's say that you think there's no way Tua's not going to come back 100%, right? And then you look at what they were asked to do in their own offense. Obviously, Tua has the history of being good 3 years in a row. Burrow has the history of one great season, and then he had a mediocre season in 2018, but he was still going to get drafted. And he was working with young receivers. That was the breakouts for both his receivers and his running back, as they're kind of like their first years in college being asked to do anything. The following year, they all have career years, and I think that a lot of that has to do with Joe Burrow. I think he had more to do with the success of the players around him, where on the other end, even though I believe Tua is going to be great, on the other end, I think the Alabama players had a lot to do with how good Tua was. If you go back and watch the games, the Alabama receivers are wide open. And whereas Joe Burrow on the other end is throwing back shoulder fades, he's really having to put the ball where his receivers can catch it. I'm not saying that there's a lack of talent in LSU by any means. I'm just saying there was more talent in Alabama. It was ridiculous how open everybody was, right? And the passes are built to basically throw the ball short, and then those receivers make the yards after catch, the yak yards. So if we talk about strictly Alabama versus LSU, 42% of the receiving yards in LSU was yards after catch. Whereas in Alabama, 65% of the yards after catch was made after catch. And I'm not saying this is Tua's fault. That's not Tua's fault that he's got great receivers around him. If I was a prospect, I'd be wanting to play for Alabama too, because again, they're loaded at receiver, and you do have to put the ball in a certain spot so that your receiver can catch and run, but that just goes to show that these receivers were so good after the catch that Tua didn't really have to air the ball down the field. Whereas Burrow, on the other end, he did. It was a more of a throw the ball down the field type of offense, because his yards, 42% was yards after catch. So his guys weren't doing the same kind of thing, which is still a lot, don't get me wrong. But it was not the same as Alabama and what they asked Burrow to do versus what they're asking Tua to do. Tua is more built for a West Coast quick release offense, and he actually had a lot more protection too. Tua's offensive line was better in my opinion. LSU, you could see it. Burrow was constantly making moves. So this is the biggest one for me. The biggest one of all of them, because if you look at the quarterbacks nowadays, you have to be able to make plays when the play breaks down, right? So the biggest one of all this is what their passer rating. Again, this is not like it's not a science. Obviously, you don't know who they're playing against, and the level of defense in college is not nearly as good as the level of defense in the NFL, right? So these stats can be adjusted based off of what you think. But for me, when I'm comparing two players, and I've already think that Burrow is a better player just on the eye test, I like to look at these stats just to confirm that I am thinking correctly, right? So under pressure, Joe Burrow's passer rating was 143.2, which is really, really good for an under pressure quarterback. It's really good for any quarterback, but it's great for an under pressure quarterback. And Tua's was 115.5. Again, Tua was good under pressure as well. I'm just telling you the difference. Joe Burrow was amazing under pressure. He was so good this 1 year. And again, he was good in 2018, so he's not just a one-year wonder that came out of nowhere. He was good. He was behind good players in Ohio State, and honestly, maybe he's developed since he got to LSU, or maybe the coaches at Ohio State just made the wrong call, right, on what quarterback should play quarterback. And then next, we got to look at the actual teams around him. So I know a lot of people, they hear the Bengals and they're just like, garbage organization. Carson Palmer has come out and said some really bad things about them, and he played quarterback there, right? So while I agree with those, I do think they're a garbage organization. They have made some moves this offseason to show that they're trying to change, right? First of all, they got Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor is a young coach, an offensive guy. He was on that Rams coaching staff offensively when they went to the Super Bowl. That year, the Rams had a crazy good offense. Again, 36 years old, he's developing. He's the new age type of coach. 3 receiver sets, really is going to open up the field analytically, is going to put Joe Burrow in the best possible spot. The Bengals believe in him and have went out there and made free agent moves. Now, a lot of them on the defense, but the offense was already pretty good. They got Jonah Williams last year in the first round. So essentially, if you think of what got added to the Bengals this year, you get Jonah Williams, which is your first round left tackle from last season, who was on the PUP list. Now he comes back, he's going to start. That's going to allow the left tackle from last year, Fred Johnson, to move over to the right side. Well, that's going to improve the right side of the line. Then they went out and got a free agent, the right guard, which we'll see if that works out. But the point is, it's already getting better. They have 3 guys on that offensive line that are 22 years old. You got to imagine they're going to improve, not get worse, right? Then you add A.J. Green, a Hall of Fame receiver, and then you draft a receiver in the second round. This team is loaded with weapons. Plus, they got a better running back in Joe Mixon and Giovanni Bernard. So they got 2 guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield. Whereas if you go to the Dolphins, they got Jordan Howard and Mike Breida, which I like Mike Breida. And honestly, I like Jordan Howard, but they're cast-offs from other teams. They're not the same level of running back that a guy like Joe Mixon is. Their receivers, they got 1 decent receiver. They have an undrafted free agent last year that everybody's going to say is going to be good, but they don't compare to A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd and John Ross. You got a guy who could take the top off, is really going to open up the field for everybody else. So again, the offense that they're on, the Bengals just have a superior offense than the Dolphins. Even if you go to coaching staff, I actually think Brian Flores is a better coach overall than Zach Taylor, but Brian Flores is a defensive guy. They brought in an offensive coordinator. They brought in Shane Gailey, 68 years old. He's kind of got, I'm not going to pretend like I know what Shane Gailey is going to do, but they brought him in to be a teacher. I do think Tua is going to have a successful career. I am not saying that at all, that he's going to be bad. I just think that Burrow's got the kind of stuff around him that is really going to allow him to succeed. Assuming they have a training camp, I would project Burrow to have the best rookie season from a quarterback ever, which is basically all you got to do is be better than Baker Mayfield was his rookie year. But if they have a training camp, now if they don't have a training camp, it's going to be hard for any rookie to really have success coming in, learning new systems, learning new players, and just being thrown into the fire without having a foundation in place. But I'll discuss my rankings later down the road when I'm comparing these to actual players, but I really like the idea of Joe Burrow having a big season, even possibly meeting that QB1 range, where right now I got him around 15. I'm still working on my rankings with QBs, but right around 15, behind that tier of like Stafford and Rodgers, and he's in a tier with like Goff and Baker Mayfield, those kind of guys. So yes, you might end up starting Joe Burrow this year. And again, that'll be updated once I learn a little bit more about the situation, right? So those were the big points when it comes to these 2 quarterbacks. That's it for today's show. Let me know what you think, who you think is going to be the better quarterback long-term, career-wise. We already know that it's pretty safe bet that Burrow's going to have a better first season. But tell me what you think about what the Dolphins are maybe going to do moving forward. And if you agree with me or disagree with me, that's it for today's show. Thanks for listening. Subscribe, like. Till next time. See ya!